Hi, I'm Peter Martin. Welcome to PLZ Soccer. You join us live from just outside Celtic's training ground at Lennoxtown. Don't forget to join us on the football show when the hot topic will be, of course, the future of Bolingoli, because his actions have prompted the First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon, to suggest that Celtic and Aberdeen should not play for the next 7 days. Now, with that in mind, Neil Lennon, the Celtic manager, was told that within the last hour. He entered the press room at Lennoxtown, and to say he was livid would be an understatement. The Celtic manager absolutely furious with Bolingoli, and he mentioned that the player had gone rogue on all the instructions that every player was fully aware of with regards to protocol and the COVID-19. Now, here's the chain of events. After the game against Hamilton, and you'll have to forgive me because behind us every now and then there'll be a car going by and the noise, but here's the chain of events. After the game against Hamilton, the players were given a couple of days off. Now at that point, Bolingoli took it upon himself to go to Spain on the Monday and return on the Tuesday. He did not tell Celtic of his movements and what he was doing. And Celtic only became aware of it because I reckon it was a newspaper that alerted them to the fact that he had left the country. The fact that he went to Spain has angered Celtic. They say the player would have been well aware of all the precautions in place, and not to tell Celtic and the manager has left him furious. And it was only when Bolingoli was confronted with the story that he had left the country that he eventually came clean on the whole affair. Now, at that point, Celtic obviously have had a meeting with the managers and government over the last 24 hours, and Neil Lennon listening to all the precautions that had to be put in place by players, bearing in mind what happened at Pittodrie with 8 of Aberdeen players in an Aberdeen pub. All the managers and captains and everybody would have been aware of the COVID-19 precautions, and it would have been reinforced because of the actions of the Aberdeen players. But off the back of that, suddenly Neil Lennon knows that Celtic are going to be right in the firing line. So the repercussions of that, Bolingoli is in 7-day lockdown. He's isolating at this moment. He does not know whether he has a future at Celtic, but I would suggest to you on a personal basis that I think Bolingoli's time at Celtic is up. When asked today at the press conference whether he thought Bolingoli could come back into the dressing room, bearing in mind what he's done to the club, the fans, and of course the players, his fellow teammates, Neil Lennon said that he found it difficult to imagine that he would be welcomed back in to the Celtic dressing room in the near future. His future has not been determined. That will be determined in the next 7 days. At the end of his quarantine, he will undoubtedly face the manager, the chief executive, the chairman, because they will be discussing his future over the next 7 days. It is a huge breach of all the stipulations that have been put in place by Celtic, the precautions, and of course the rules of being a professional footballer with a club of the stature of Celtic. So, in short, my personal opinion is that Neil Lennon gave us a real hint that Bolingoli's future at Celtic is well and truly over. Only time will tell on that. It's a huge breach of the rules. When the First Minister of Scotland weighs in and said Scottish football is on a yellow card and the next one is a red card, that has implications for everyone. Neil Lennon did go on to say that Lee Griffiths, the investigation into his party at the House, he doesn't see anything that went on there as being serious and worthy of any kind of penalty towards the Celtic striker. So that issue looks to be settled. But the Bolingoli one has repercussions not just for Celtic. There's a huge embarrassment here because of all the precautions they put in place, all the money they've spent, all the work they put in at Lennoxtown, and of course the precautions they put in at Celtic Park on game day. And remember, this is game day without the supporters. And this sort of thing happening has prompted Jason Leach, the Chief Medical Officer in Scotland, to suggest that he doesn't really have the 100% trust in the players. He obviously understands the integrity and the hard work that's going in from the clubs, But from the players, he's not so sure, bearing in mind what he's witnessed with the Aberdeen 8 and now with Bolingoli. Nicola Sturgeon says it's yellow. The red card could see Scottish football shut down again. That has repercussions for everyone, not just the players on the field, not just the whole club, Celtic, and the wider community of the SPFL. There are lots of businesses attached to football that could feel the full force of this if the government were to step in and close down Scottish football again. So it's a huge talking point. We've just left Lennoxtown. Neil Lennon, to say he is furious, again, I'll recap, is an understatement. He confronted Bolingoli about this, and now, within the last couple of hours, the Celtic manager, because of Bolingoli's actions, is now aware that Celtic will not play over the next 7 days. So the game against St Mirren won't happen, the game against Aberdeen won't happen, and the players just have to get on with it in their bubble and hope that there are no further misdemeanours, not only here at Celtic, but anywhere else in the country. We are now at that situation where there can be no more slip-ups. Scottish football has had the warnings. We're on a last warning, and any other player who defies the rules within the club, and of course the overall government rules that govern all of us on a day-to-day basis, then the red card will be brought out and Scottish football will be back into lockdown. That is huge financial repercussions for everyone, and of course this could set back the hopes of Scottish football trying to get fans in as early as possible, albeit in a limited number. This sort of thing sets it back as well. There's so much to talk about. Celtic's next game will be against KR Reykjavik, the qualifier in the Champions League. So Celtic fans will be kicking their heels, will be very, very angry, not only with the player, but the fact that they can't watch their team play. Bolingoli, it was, as I put to Neil Lennon, almost a double deception. Not only not telling the club and the manager that he was going to Spain, but over and above that, coming back in and not in quarantine, not in isolation, from coming back from Spain, he actually goes out onto the park and plays with his fellow teammates, putting them at risk, putting the Kilmarnock players at risk, putting all the staff and everybody who was at Rugby Park for that 1-1 draw on Sunday. And that really has been hammered home to him, the severity of his actions, the stupidity of his actions, and the severity of it for everybody else. Had that been a positive test that he'd come back with, Lord knows what would have happened. But nevertheless, he's tested negative. He's now in isolation. He will be dealt with in 7 days. It's only my personal opinion, reading into what Neil Lennon had to say at the press conference, that I believe that it will be very difficult for him to continue as a Celtic player. And what penalty comes out, we'll find out in 7 days when the manager, the chairman, the chief executive and the Celtic board discuss this massive breach of rules. This is not something that, as Neil Lennon put it at the press conference, a misdemeanour of the scale of just players being players. This is something that affects not only the club, but the whole community. COVID-19 has an effect on the whole of Scotland, and this sport has lost its trust at the moment from the government's point of view, and they have to try and regain that trust. Every player has to abide by the rules. So that's what we're going to talk about. I've just left Lennoxtown to hear the thoughts of Neil Lennon. It's up to you now. Give us your thoughts on the programme tonight. Hugh McDonald will join us on the programme alongside, of course, myself, Roughie, and Darren Jackson will be with us as well. So give us your thoughts on it.